Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Randy Mills, and this is Sports History Now, where we honor, celebrate, and preserve Kentucky's greatest sports moments, one story at a time. And I'm joined today by one of Kentucky's all-time favorite sons, Jacob Tamme. Jacob's football career included state championships at Boyle County High School, two-time recognition as the first-team All-SEC tight end, and a 9-year NFL career that included 2 Super Bowl games. I want to begin today by welcoming Jacob and saying thank you very much for joining us. And I really want to go back to the beginning, if we may, Jacob, your family's history in Danville, Kentucky, where you were born and raised, and discuss with us a little bit about growing up in that community, playing multiple sports, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. First of all, we lived in 3 different cities throughout my NFL career. We love Danville so much. We're back living there now. So that's how much I thought of my childhood. Just was super blessed to grow up in a family of loving parents, just very sort of middle-class upbringing there. My dad worked at Kentucky Utilities for 40 plus years, and my mom was involved in the school system, and so they still live in the same house I grew up in today. So I just love the town, love the community, loved our school system. My family's been in the cattle business. I'm in the investment management business now and in the cattle business. My family's been in the cattle business for about 115 years. So I say all that to say, going back to my upbringing, going out to the farm, my granddad's house, and that always meant a lot to me and was always something very special to me in my blood. And so now we were able to build a home on some of the old family farmland, and we do have an Angus cattle operation out there. As far as all that, that's how much my childhood meant to me that we finished, I should say, one of the stops in my NFL career was in Denver, and we really loved living out there. Colorado's such an amazing state. Again, we love Danville so much that we decided, unlike a lot of my friends from that team that decided to stay out there and live, we wanted to come back home to Kentucky. So just had a tremendous upbringing, great school system. I know we'll get into it more, but was able to play on a lot of teams. And last thing, Randy, I would say, you mentioned multiple sports. I'm a big believer in playing as many sports as you can play. It's really a different day and age now than it used to be. I do tell people this all the time. A lot of folks ask my opinion on it. I want kids to play as many sports as they can, as many sports as they love. I do think it's harder than ever to do that. I think the competition level is incredibly different than when I was in high school. And that's a little over 20 years ago now. I think it's changed a lot. I think it's harder to compete on a high-level high school baseball team than it's ever been. I think it's harder to compete on a high-level high school basketball team. Football, same story. Particularly, though, like basketball and baseball, these sports that are so skill-specific. Kids are training year-round, which just raises the level needed for everybody. So there's good and bad in that. There's positives and negatives. But I think playing as many sports as you can. I'm certainly really thankful that I got to play 3 throughout my high school career.
No doubt. And in your early years, speak to the influences in your life to fall in love with sports. Some of your early mentors, maybe, certainly your father, your brother, mother. How did you kind of begin? Was it the good old T-ball and a little flag football, or how did it all get started, Jacob?
Yeah, it was definitely the good old T-ball. I don't know that we necessarily even did flag football back then, but it was a good old T-ball. I started football in the 4th grade, played basketball my whole upbringing as well. Yeah, mom and dad, my parents were instrumental in my upbringing, and particularly dad in my love of sports, although mom will tell you about one very specific point in time where we were shooting basketball in the backyard, and she made a shot from the garage, which is her claim to fame athletically, and why any of me and my siblings had athletic success. It was proven that she was a large part of it in that one shot from the garage. Look where you all got it from. So mom and dad were instrumental in that upbringing and just love of sports. I remember we grew up I grew up a big Cincinnati Reds fan, still am to this day, but just watching those teams go on. I have a memory of that World Series win and just going outside and celebrating on the front porch with Dad and some friends, and just we grew up around sports, and
Definitely.
multiple ones, not just football.
How about that fourth grade football experience? What do you recall? Maybe early coaching, or and then maybe after you discuss that, you might even tell us kind of how you sorted out your first loves. Were you thinking more basketball, football, baseball? So I know I'm throwing a couple of thoughts at you, but we'll get back to that fourth grade football and kind of kick along from there.
Fourth grade football, I have a couple of distinct memories. I remember being so nervous the first time I ever touched the ball on a play verse to me, and I was so nervous, and I scored a touchdown. I think, ran it 50 or 60 yards or whatever and scored. And I think my memory tells me that that's the first time I ever touched the ball in a game. And I remember, again, being so nervous and then being so excited, after the fact. I remember some great games between back then. Each elementary school had their own team. So Woodlawn is who I played for, and then Perryville, Junction City, those Boyle County elementary schools. So I remember a great game against Perryville where my cousin Adam Tamme was playing for Perryville, and some other buddies. And it was such a rivalry, those fourth, fifth, I believe sixth grade years there at that time. I remember the field we were at, and I remember that game being like a classic game. And as far as coaching, Ernie Hatfield was the name of my elementary school football coach. And he did tell me something stuck with me for 30 plus years now. And I use this a lot talking to folks about the power of the right word in a given situation. I remember him telling me at our banquet, after maybe my fifth grade year, he said, "Jacob, if you work at it, you can be the next Tim Couch."
Wow.
And that stuck with me the rest of my career. It really meant something to me that he said that. And although I didn't become the next Tim Couch necessarily, I was a quarterback at the time and was supposed to be a quarterback when I was in high school. We may get into that more, but I never got the opportunity because the daggone guy in front of me, Jeff Duggins, kept winning every single year, winning every game. So I never got to play quarterback. But Ernie Hatfield telling me that really was something I never forgot. And it speaks to kind of the power of the right word in the right situation in our lives.
Definitely. As a fifth, sixth grader, how did you rate how you liked each of those three sports? Did you think you were a little more of a basketball guy, or did you think it was football? Of course, I know kind of like we grew up as well. We played whatever was in season and loved it during the time. But in your mind, had you kind of begun to kind of like one more than the other?
I really don't think so.
Uh-huh.
Truthfully, I loved them all. I really was a whichever one is in season guy. Football and baseball were probably my two best sports. I know in basketball, basketball's so skill specific. And when you go, growing up as a kid, a little bit different, but by the time we got to high school, it's like, if you're not working ball handling, if you're not, if you're not in the gym, and by the way, when you go 15-0 and win state championships every year, that also cuts down on your preseason gym time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
That's
like
right.
basketball was always trying to play catch up. We had good teams and, had some good players. And I remember my basketball coach telling me one time, "Hey, Jacob, we need you to score more. We need you to be more aggressive, quit passing the ball so much." But I never felt like I was like a great basketball player, but, I still needed to kind of be more aggressive and step my game up for our team. So I guess I would say football and baseball were my two favorites. Although I really enjoyed basketball too.
Right.
Enjoyed all three growing up.
And then as you went into your middle school years, you mentioned Jeff Duggins. Is that right? Was that his
That's
first
right.
name? Yeah. So there was a little bit of a core there, I guess. But I don't know, as you were growing up, and we're going to talk about your middle school years just a little bit, but on the high school level, as you probably went to some Friday night games and that sort of thing, when you were growing up, I don't think we could call Boyle County High School football a state powerhouse. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
in those years. Okay.
Yep.
Now, how were things coming together in middle school with some of the devotion to football? Did you have seventh and eighth grade, pretty good kind of records? Were you beginning to see that this could be a special group?
Yeah. So actually, when I think about my middle school years, what I was doing was, of course, I was playing middle school football, and Jim Spears was my head coach, and I remember some of the assistant coaches still to this day. Bart Berdar, Jake Smith is our current middle school coach at Boyle County. His dad was a middle school coach back then. So my middle school years were really good. They pushed us hard. They really did. They pushed us hard. They taught us what it was like to work hard out there on the field in practice, which is what Coach Chuck Smith was building at the high school level at that time. And the other part about my middle school years was I was a ball boy on the high school team. So maybe the very end of elementary and then most of middle school, I was a ball boy. So I was on the sideline.
Right.
Through those years where, to your point, the
Mm-hmm.
program wasn't some juggernaut. The program was trying to create itself, and Coach Chuck Smith was building it. And so I saw some of those tough losses, and I saw some of those great wins that were sort of the foundations of the program before we got into the state championship years as a ball boy. So that was really special.
What grade were you in, Jacob, when Chuck Smith became the head football coach at Boyle County?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I don't know for sure, but I would have been late elementary, probably.
Right, for sure. Well, we're going to get into this 4-year career at Boyle County, and I want to set it up in this manner, if I may. So you become a high school student. Ultimately, you're a 4-year football letterman, also an outstanding baseball, basketball player. As a wide receiver and cornerback, you won 4 consecutive state football championships with an overall record of 58-2. First team All-Stater. Your high school stats included 97 receptions for 1,866 yards. That's actually 19 yards per catch, 32 touchdowns. And of course, I don't know that you ever left the field because you had 23 interceptions as a DB, returned a couple of those for touchdowns. And then even as a punt returner, you had a couple of returns for touchdown. When you were a freshman, Jacob, was that Coach Chuck Smith's first state championship team, or had he had a team? It was, wasn't it? Okay. You came out of middle school, and thank goodness you were taught a strong work ethic. But I wonder when June hit, or whatever month it may have been, that you had a new head football coach after middle school, and his name was Chuck Smith. Tell us about that summer, that preseason practice. Were there thoughts in mind of grandeur or tell me a little bit about that grind that you encountered coming maybe from, if I may say again, middle school superstar to, hey, my goodness, this is Chuck Smith, Boyle County High School football.
Yeah. So that freshman season was the first state. It ended up being the first state championship in school history. But I would be absolutely lying to you if I told you I had anything to do with it, because I didn't. As a freshman, I didn't play any varsity at all. Going back to sort of the preseason time frame that you referenced, I remember one practice in particular where we had a running back named Matt Quinn, who was just an absolute stud of a running back, impossible to tackle, incredible motor, just a great high school running back. And Coach Smith had about 5 of us freshmen, defensive backs. I was playing corner, ended up playing corner my whole career, but we had to tackle Matt. And he, it was like our indoctrination into toughness and tackling and figuring out that we had to find a way to do this. You got to get Matt Quinn on the ground. And basically they snapped the ball. They tossed it to Matt on a sweep, no blockers, nothing else, just us and a little bit of a constricted space, right? And Matt Quinn. And so I remember that day, I remember how horrible that was. But I remember finally getting Matt on the ground. The good news is Matt got more tired than we did. All right. Cause Matt probably took dozens of reps. The rest of us were taking every fifth one. But that was just a little example that stuck with me as a moment. Coach Smith put us in those situations a lot. He always wanted practice to be more difficult than the game. If you dropped a game-winning pass in practice, it was as heartbreaking or more than if it happened in a game. And because it never happened in the games, because all we did was win, because practice was so hard. And I remember Coach Smith always, he would get us. He had us just knowing that if we didn't play our best, we were going to get beat by every team, whether it was the worst team on the schedule or a legitimately good team. And at that time, we didn't know quite what we were either. It was the beginnings of building something. Coach Smith was building something then. And that freshman year, I remember playing a lot of freshman games, and I remember varsity practice being always pretty dang difficult.
And then, Jacob, let's roll into your sophomore year. Where did you become a two-way starter as a sophomore?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Now we're defending the state championship, and I think that's one of the toughest things in sports, isn't it? To win a state championship, you have to have, I think, good team leadership, individual player leadership. And of course, Coach Smith, he's got to come into the picture big time again, because that whole motivation piece and maybe, resting on your laurels and that sort of thing. So take us on into some of those times, even, sophomore through your senior year, and how you all continued to maintain that high level of play.
Yeah. So actually it gets interesting my sophomore year, because going back to something I referenced earlier. So Jeff Duggins was our quarterback when I was a freshman. He was a sophomore, and that was the year of the first state championship. He went 15-0 as the starting quarterback as a sophomore and won the state championship. Well, the sort of air quotes plan was that starting my sophomore year, or maybe my junior at the latest, but probably my sophomore year, that I was going to be the starting quarterback. Well, that plan got adjusted when Jeff Duggins won 15 games in a row and was a really, really, really good high school quarterback. Also a really, really good high school outside linebacker. But he was the starting quarterback, and so he was a starting quarterback again his junior season, my sophomore season, after he went 15-0. So as a sophomore, I moved to receiver and still playing corner on defense, and became a starter. In our first game of the year, I believe I had a touchdown catch and an interception. And I just remember thinking, hey, I can do this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's go. And played 3 games and was off to a really good start statistically and everything else. The 4th game of the season at Harrodsburg, I broke my leg and broke my femur right above my knee. Got tackled on a catch across the middle. And the best part of that story is Jeff got ejected from the game. I got hurt, and while I was still on the ground, Jeff Duggins got ejected. He was mad at the the guy that hit me, and said some things, and the white hat threw Jeff out of the game. I was our backup quarterback at the time, so we went from our starter to our third string in a matter of about 15 seconds. I got my leg broke. Jeff got ejected. Our third string quarterback throws up on the sideline, realizing he's going in the game in a matter of seconds. So, but I ended up missing the whole season. I got back in time to go out on the field, walk out there, and be the emergency guy behind us taking a knee at the state championship game. That was the next time I was on a field. Was when we took a knee, I got to walk out there and stand behind the quarterback. So I missed the whole sophomore year. Fast forward to my junior year, again, Free Duggins has gone 15-0 again. He's now 30-0. So I'm not a quarterback anymore.
Right.
I'm a receiver and a second string quarterback. And I was doing pretty good at receiver, so it all worked out well. But of course, we won 15 games again. And then my senior year, we've now won 3 state championships and 45-0. We had an interesting, we lost Jeff. So now I was the quarterback, or Coach Smith's son, Brandon, was, I believe, a sophomore at the time, and he was a quarterback. So at the beginning of the year, we spent some time kind of going back and forth, splitting the quarterback duties. We can get into it more, but we ended up all of a sudden we'd gone from 45-0 to 3-2. You can imagine the feeling after the first 5 games of that season. We ended up going with Brandon at quarterback for most of the rest of the year, and won 10 in a row and won our 4th state championship. So it was a special end to that year for us as seniors after a rough start, especially relative to the previous 3 seasons.
I want to talk a little bit about your recruiting process, but before that, Jacob, on this Boyle County note, now that we do know that Boyle County High School football is a juggernaut, a state powerhouse, can you just speak to the legacy of Chuck Smith? And obviously there's been lots of hard work beyond that, of course, but the belief system was in place and the expectations were in place. So obviously we want to give lots of credit to folks who followed Chuck. But can you speak to the legacy of Chuck Smith, what it meant for Boyle County football, what it meant for Titletown, and how Boyle County feels about itself, maybe even as a high school? That my father, who was a high school principal, superintendent, of course, KHSAA commissioner, he used to say in his high school days, hey, when that football team gets off to a 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 start, we're off to a good school year. Everybody's feeling good about themselves. But speak to that a bit, if you would, and the tremendous legacy that we can credit Chuck Smith with.
Yeah, Coach Smith, he really built it. He built it. He set the standard. He created the standard. And I think your point's well taken, not only, of course, for the football program, but not only that, I do think that bleeds over into the school system as a whole. Boyle County is one of the best public school systems in the state of Kentucky across any metric, right? And I think that's been built up over time. And if you go back to the rise of the football program around the year 2000 and carrying forward from there, Coach Smith built it, and he built it the right way. He built it on a foundation of character and hard work and things that are still applicable today, although kids are so much different now. But Coach Smith really, he built it in a way that we knew as players that no one in the state of Kentucky worked harder than we did. And that was a special thing. That was unique, I think. He pushed us extremely hard, probably harder than you can push kids in most cases today. Nothing against today's kids, just a different world. But we knew no one had worked harder. We knew when we stepped out on the field, we deserved it. And that was, now we just had to go get it. And I think there's so much of that is still applicable today, but maybe not always being applied like it could be. But Coach Smith built it. He set the standard. He created the standard. There have been many good coaches since. Well, we have a really, really good one now, but I don't think the program, well, in fact, I know the program wouldn't be where it is today without Chuck Smith and a bunch of really good assistants that were alongside him too.
No doubt. Well, now here's what happened at the University of Kentucky. But and after I read this, we're going to ask you about that recruitment, how there might have been a twist and turn about getting you to the University of Kentucky. But thank goodness that happened for all of us University of Kentucky football fans, because at UK, Jacob Tamme was a 2-time All-SEC first-team tight end in both his junior and senior seasons, voted by the Associated Press and, of course, SEC coaches. He was a perennial member of the SEC Academic Honor Roll, the all-time top pass-catching tight end in UK football history, and second among all SEC tight ends. 133 catches, 1,417 yards, 11 big touchdowns. In 2007, he was selected as the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year and as a first-team academic All-American, something big in Jacob's life. He was the 2007 recipient of the Bobby Bowden Award, a national honor presented by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And to top it off, Jacob was inducted into the University of Kentucky Athletics Hall of Fame in 2018. How did we get Jacob Tamme to UK? Was it a slam dunk? Here's a guy who I believe grew up as a University of Kentucky football fan and blue and white, and maybe that was his dream. He can share that with us. But I'd like to know a bit about that recruitment process leading up to you signing on the dotted line to become a Wildcat.
Yeah, happy to share. So my recruitment story, it was a little bit unique. When I think back through it, this story got a little bit twisted a few times over the last 20 years, to make it seem maybe like something it wasn't. So let me back up and rewind a little bit to my senior year of high school. I had been pretty heavily recruited. I had been recruited hard by Kentucky. I had been recruited hard by Northwestern at the time. Had a really nice program and a fantastic school right up there north of Chicago. I'd been recruited really hard by West Virginia, where Rich Rodriguez was at the time. Oh, by the way, back there now.
That's right.
But yeah, so I had been recruited really hard by those schools and some others, but it was kind of like those three were the ones I was really paying attention to. I mentioned earlier that our first loss of my high school career was in our senior year, and I believe it was week 3, and it was against crosstown rival Danville. So if you can imagine heartbreak as a high school athlete, just think about that and wrap that up into that. Coach Morris was at Kentucky at the time, and Coach Morris was under a lot of restraint. He had a lot of restrictions around him from the standpoint that the NCAA violations of the previous staff had put, I think they had 13 scholarships that year to give out instead of the 25 that would normally be given out. So Coach Morris had recruited me really hard. Never really gave me like an ultimatum or anything, but I kind of knew like if I want to go to Kentucky, I probably need to let them know soon. So I had told my parents, hey, I'm going to commit to Kentucky this weekend. We're going up to the game on Saturday. I'm going to go to Kentucky. I told a couple close friends that week at lunch in the high school. I remember telling them. I hadn't told Kentucky yet because I wanted to tell them in person on Saturday. We got beat on Friday night. I had a little quad bruise. I had a big time heart bruise, so I didn't go to the game. And I honestly felt like committing to Kentucky that day. I didn't feel like it was right. I mean, my brothers and I had just lost our first game of our careers. Felt like we had let the whole program down. I'm going to go make it about me this weekend and like me going to Kentucky. So I didn't do it. Well, Monday morning, Coach Smith came and got me out of the high school cafeteria. He said, hey, Jacob, I got some news. Coach Morris just called me. He said, they got to pull your scholarship offer. And my heart sunk like I had finally kind of come to the conclusion for sure I want to go to Kentucky. I grew up a huge Kentucky fan. I've been bleeding blue my whole life. I had wanted to be smart about it, make sure I considered my other options long enough, came to the conclusion, hey, this is definitely what I want to do. This is my childhood dream. Let's go. Then didn't commit that weekend. Then it got pulled on Monday. And it was just incredibly heartbreaking. The part of that story that got messed up a little bit over the last 20 years was like that Coach Morris like pulled my offer or something or did something wrong. Like Coach Morris had to do what he had to do. A guy named Keenan Burton committed on that Saturday from Louisville Manual. And if you remember Keenan Burton, so fast forward a little bit, I'll go back and tell more of the story, but I always told Keenan, we ended up playing together at Kentucky. I told him, man, I can't believe you took my scholarship, Keenan. You caused me a lot of heartache for several months. Well, so if we go from, say, roughly October, we go forward to January, and I'm getting ready to go on my official visits to Northwestern and West Virginia. Kentucky's recruiting me to come get on like a half baseball scholarship and play both sports. I had been recruited hard by Coach Madison to play baseball too. So the idea of playing both sports was always on my mind, but I really kind of want the full scholarship. Well, Coach Morris left and went to Baylor, and I remember the day, not because I was, I was happy from the standpoint that I knew, again, even though I didn't hold anything against Coach Morris and the staff at the time, they had made their decision that they couldn't take another receiver, which, again, I understood. But I knew with a new staff, maybe there was a chance they might take another receiver. And, boy, I think between me as a high school kid and Chuck Smith, no one called the University of Kentucky more over that next week after it was announced that Coach Morris had made the decision to go to Baylor. We were calling the athletic director. We were calling the football staff people that were still on. We were like, hey, I remember I called and I said, I just want whoever is hired to know if they offer me a scholarship, I'm coming. And sure enough, a few days after Coach Brooks was hired, I became his first recruit, and he and a few other guys that were on the staff already at the time that he had already started to build his staff. I remember about 5 or 6 of them came to my parents' house, and they had breakfast with us, and they offered me a scholarship, and he gave me a chance to come to Kentucky. Was able to make it work, and it was, man, that's how I got there. Coach Brooks gave me an opportunity that I was immensely grateful for. Uh, the finish of that story is there was a day, I told you about the day Coach Smith came and got me out of the cafeteria. He said, hey, I got some news for you. Kentucky's got to pull your scholarship. Well, there was another day in January or February, soon after Coach Brooks got hired, where Coach Smith came and got me out of class, pulled me into the hallway. He said, hey, Jacob, Coach Brooks just called. He's offering you a scholarship to play football at the University of Kentucky. And I went ahead and said yes for it. So I remember both of those moments.
That's awesome. Well, Jacob, I remember some tremendous highlights. There was just such a surge of excitement, I think, during your years as a University of Kentucky football player. I reflect on the triple overtime victory over number 1 ranked LSU. How huge was that? So huge, in fact, that we actually got college game day at the University of Kentucky. How amazing was that? Did you even realize kind of what you were some of the history you were making during those days?
I'll tell you a little story about that college game day. So the summer before my freshman year at Kentucky, I went on a family trip with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, and her family down to Disney World. And we were at Disney World, which of course is owned by ESPN. And I was such a huge college game day fan growing up. I mean, every Saturday morning, we'd play Friday nights. We watched the news on Friday nights to see the highlights of our game. And then Saturday morning, I'd get up and I'm watching college game day, seeing what the biggest games are that week and seeing where they're at. Well, we went down to Disney World that summer before my freshman season. And as we were leaving, we were at a little store and I saw this college game day keychain. And I told Allison, my girlfriend at the time, I said, I'm going to get this stupid little keychain. And I said, I'm going to keep it on my keys until we bring college game day to Kentucky.
My gosh.
And I told a couple other buddies about it, and they said, they made fun of me, said I'm an idiot, said there's no way we're ever getting college game day at Kentucky. And so you referencing that reminds me of that story. I kept that keychain on my keys until that game. And that was just such a tremendous moment for the program. I think the game was like 45-38 against Florida. It would have been great. Slowed Tebow down maybe one more time.
Right.
But what a tremendous time for the program.
Yeah, without question. Influence of Coach Brooks, if you will, on you as a person, player and a person.
Coach Brooks was so incredible. Really exactly what the program needed at the time. I mean, I give Coach Brooks and Mitch Barnhart a lot of credit. The first few years with Coach Brooks were not good. They were tough. And Coach Morris had some success before leaving. So, there was some good in the program, but Coach Brooks still knew that, we still needed to take further steps. And in order to take those further steps, it might mean a little bit of backtracking early on, which is never easy, never fun. Certainly not hoping for that, but you got to understand it might happen. And I remember, the fan base, the fire Mitch and Rich and, fire Mitch or fire Rich thing, they would ditch Rich. So there was a lot of animosity or at least, frustration those first couple of years. But that's why Rich Brooks was the perfect person for the job, because he could see right through that. Like, he was already old enough at the time and had seen enough at the time that like that stuff was like kind of water off a duck's back with him. He could see where he was taking the program where he wanted it to go. So he could see right through that and not let that bother him. And Mitch allowed him the opportunity to do that. So that was a good combination there at the time. And he really had us believing that we could change the culture of the program and build something different than Kentucky football had seen in a long time. And by the end of the 06, most of the 07, season. We really did that. We had some losses in 07 that are just still frustrate me to this day. But the coolest part about it was we built it up to a way where Kentucky was respected across the nation against anybody. And that was something that was really important to me as a kid that had grown up as a fan of Kentucky football. You know, I understand what the fans feel and what they want. I am one. I was one. So to give the fan what we want, what I want is like the pride in our football program to know it's respected. To know that when we show up on Saturday that we have a chance to beat anybody we see. I don't care if it's Georgia, Alabama, used to be Florida back then, right? Like, we want the program, we want to be proud of the program. And we had a group of guys there, 06, 07, and before that too. But in 06, 07 in particular, we were able to bring a group of guys together that really cared about that. I think of Wesley Woodyard. He wasn't a Kentucky kid. He's a Georgia kid. But he loved the program as much as I did. And that always meant a lot to me.
Yes.
We brought in some kids that maybe weren't Kentucky kids, but they bought in totally, and they developed a love of this state and the program. And boy, that seems harder than ever nowadays, than everything around college athletics.
Sure.
But we had some special guys and a special group of coaches and a couple of a special season and part of another special season in those times.
Definitely. I believe we had back-to-back bowl wins, didn't we?
Yeah, we won the Music City Bowl back-to-back years.
Yes.
Florida State and Clemson.
Yeah, boy. Absolutely. Well, and of course, that very successful college career catapulted you into the NFL, which we want to touch on as well. Selected in the 4th round of the 2008 NFL draft by the Indianapolis Colts, of course. You had a 9-year NFL career, including 2 Super Bowl appearances, one with the Colts, one with the Broncos. And upon your retirement in 2016, statistically speaking, 259 receptions, 2,570 yards, 14 big touchdowns, and also playing with a guy named Peyton Manning. What about that? Well, I guess let's just hit it a little bit on your name is called, you're going to be an NFL player. What was that emotion like?
Well, it was incredible. Certainly, I remember the first time I ever thought, oh, wow, I might play in the NFL. And that was when Tony Neely, the sports information director at Kentucky, called me on the phone after my junior season at Kentucky. And he said, hey, Jacob, congratulations. You've been named first team All-SEC. And I remember as I was hanging up the phone thinking, wow, first team All-SEC players, they go to the NFL. So I thought, again, just kind of different than nowadays. But that was just how my journey was. That's how it unfolded. I was able to play on really good teams and then got individual recognition and individual advancement. I really feel like in large part due to the good teams I was on, including those last couple of years at Kentucky, where we made great progress as a program. More people start looking. The Colts are looking. But that journey was incredible. I never could have dreamt it. Getting drafted by the Colts at that time, just incredible. Tony Dungy calling me on draft day, Bill Polian, that team that I went to, friendship still to this day, such great leadership. They had won a Super Bowl, I believe, a year or two before. Ended up going to one during my time there, to your point. I got to have, we can go a lot of different directions here, but I got to have an incredible NFL experience. I played on really, really good teams every single year. Went to the playoffs with 3 different teams. I actually went to the Super Bowl with all 3 teams. I didn't play in that third one, Randy, but I went 3 times. So
it's amazing.
Lost one with each team. But there's very few guys that have been able to go to 3 Super Bowls.
Absolutely.
There's even fewer that have gone to 3 with 3 different franchises. And there might be 0 other than me that have ever gone to 3 with 3 different franchises and never won. So take that for whatever it's worth.
That's right.
We had I got to experience a ton of success at the NFL level, in large part to, Peyton was a big part of that. Had a really good quarterback in Atlanta too for those 2 seasons with Matt Ryan, but we had great teams. And I also had one season with the Colts where we lost our first 14 games. Goodness. So I tell people all the time, I got to see greatness across multiple levels. I saw a season where we won our first 14 games, went to 3 different Super Bowls, 3 different franchises, also had a season where we went 0-14 to start the year. So I got to see a little bit of everything in my career. But yeah, I'll talk about Peyton for a second, if that's okay.
Yes.
Because he was such a tremendous influence on me and remains one of my great friends from the game to this day, which I pinch myself even now. But he is the only Tennessee Volunteer I've ever met that I actually like. No, just kidding. I it took me some time, especially after that senior year at Kentucky, getting beat 52-50, I believe, in 3 overtimes. Okay, not to bring back more heartache, but you have those great wins and great losses throughout careers. That one was one of the hardest losses of my life. Okay, and so the first time I met Peyton, all I could see was a big orange T on his forehead. You know, I there's no way I can even like this guy. But and then on top of all that, I actually dropped the first pass he ever threw me. It was the first practice as a Colt in the spring after getting drafted, and we had probably 5 rookie quarterbacks, and then Peyton. And these rookies, we're throwing 5-yard outs. I'm running just a simple 5-yard stick, all right? As easy as you could possibly do. And all these rookies are humming the ball as hard as they can possibly throw it. It's their first practice, too. So they're showing off their arm strength on these 5-yard outs. And I remember thinking, oh, gosh, I better get my eyes and hands around because this ball is coming quick. And then I run my route, and I do. And then as I flip and turn, and the ball is like it's in slow motion. It's like floating. Everything got messed up. All my time got off. I ended up knocking it down. I just knocked the ball down. Like I was playing defense almost. So just everything got out of whack. And oh my gosh, what just happened? Oh my goodness. Peyton Manning threw that ball. He didn't have anything to prove. He wasn't trying to hum that thing in there, Brett Favre style at 1,000 miles an hour. He was just throwing, unlike all those rookies. I said, you idiot, Jacob. You didn't even look to see who was throwing it. It was Peyton Manning. And you just dropped the first pass he ever threw you. So I thought I was getting cut for sure. But I made it through the first couple of weeks, and then it was a long time before I ever dropped another one from him. So just a tremendous experience, though, being a part of that Colts franchise to begin my career. And then Denver was also awesome. And then my last 2 years in Atlanta, I was there with Dan Quinn, with a tremendous team, and really just great memories from all 3 places.
Yeah. Well, you saw some, I would think, winning leadership styles that carry over into your life today.
For sure. You know, my faith is very important to me. When I went to the Colts, we had a group of leaders that were all so strong in their faith, and a chaplain who still works with the Colts today, named Eric Simpson, who was such a great mentor to me and instrumental in my development, in my walk with the Lord, and just becoming a man and taking care of your family. And I mean, all those sorts of things people don't think about, you know, an NFL player going through. They just, you know, see the guy out on the field, and is he helping their fantasy football team? By the way, me too. I mean, big fantasy football player now. These guys are real people. They're going through real things, you know, developing into men. And the Colts had such a great foundation for that. So that was awesome. I mean, you think about Tony Dungy and go down from there.
Definitely.
And the leadership in the locker room. And then in Denver, John Fox was a different type of leader, but Coach John, he always had my back. I had a ton of respect for him and the staff there. Really great friendships there to this day. And then Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was a tremendous leader. And when he got fired by the Falcons, I told a lot of people he is going to have a lot of success when he decides to become a head coach again. Of course, he had a great success as a D coordinator with the Cowboys for several years recently. And when the Commanders hired him, I said, man, the Commanders are going to, because he was a really good head coach his first time doing it there in Atlanta. And then things kind of got a little wonky after my retirement. Not because I retired, but that time frame there, like afterward, I don't know what happened, but I know Coach Quinn learned from it. I know Dan, whatever it was, like when he got his next shot, he was going to be really good. And so I'm really excited. I'm cheering on the Commanders now just because of him and some of the staff there. So
for sure.
I was around some great leaders.
Absolutely. And of course, that time came in 2016 with the announcement of your retirement. And I think fortunately for Kentuckians and those of us here in Central Kentucky, you chose to return home to Danville. And if you'll share with us kind of what you're doing now, but maybe I know a few things are going on in your life. You have an association with the University of Kentucky. I think you're in the financial industry. But first, let's go back to something you alluded to a little while back. I think you mentioned the college game. A bit different. Certainly the college athletics landscape different as we speak in the year 2025. Maybe your opinions or thoughts a little bit about the NIL era, the transfer portal, your association with the University of Kentucky in that regard.
Yeah. So I'm on the board of governors for Champions Blue LLC, which now houses the UK athletic department. So, from that standpoint, really, strategically just trying to think about things like revenue generation, things like, how do you build an athletic department and run it in this day and age, given all the different constructs that are being put in place around transfer portal, NIL, college athletics more broadly. So it's a real honor for me to be a part of that, alongside a couple of other outside governors and then some folks inside the department and inside the university. I'm learning more every day related to that. But just in broadly speaking, and maybe even outside of that role, I would just say the landscape has changed so much. I think there's a lot of good in it. I think it creates a lot of issues for administrators, for coaches. It's just different than it's ever been. I think it's wonderful that the athletes can get paid. I think without the right constructs around that, it creates a Wild West that's just a hard landscape to it's a hard landscape to operate in, and it's a hard landscape to put any, for the NCAA or any other governing body, the College Sports Commission, to really monitor. I do think there's been positive developments on that front with like the College Sports Commission and various different things over the last several months after the House settlement. But I think even if going more broadly than that, the teams and the players that have the most success, I believe, moving forward in this environment are going to be the ones that can create an atmosphere that's the most like it was 20 years ago. Even inside of everything going on now, the teams that have so players getting paid creates this sort of baseline level of selfishness. It's more about self and individual than it's ever been. Again, that's not necessarily bad if handled the right way. Like players getting paid, if you don't allow it to create that within a team, get kind of inside a locker room, if everyone can kind of handle it from the business perspective, and still have a group of guys coming together for a common goal that's above and beyond themselves and their pay. And I think of football a lot naturally. That football locker room is so special and so unique. Like, I think there's been cases where the changing landscape has brought on locker room division across different places, different schools. The teams that find ways to avoid that and live in this new construct, but still have guys that are really concerned about the team, that is going to be a recipe for a special kind of success, I really feel like. The transfer portal is a whole nother animal. There's been just some very recent developments there, maybe like related to football, where maybe condensing it or which I think is probably good net. I mean, I'm all for, again, players having the freedom to make a decision and go somewhere that's better for them. But programs and coaches also have to have some level of knowledge of what they have on their roster. So again, that's a lot. I'm going to do a lot right there. I try to look at it from multiple angles and come to conclusions and sort of viewpoints that are informed by, if an issue has two different sides to it, to really spend time on both of those. And I guess where I would come out as a whole is just, we need to have a recognition that the college athletic landscape has changed. It will have more iterations from here. Mm-hmm. It is never going back to what it once was.
Right.
But the teams and programs, the guys and gals in locker rooms that can come together to take care of their business, but then also really be concerned about the team, I think will have a lot of success across multiple fields.
Jacob, I know that family and faith are at the top of your lifestyle. And if you would, just kind of help us here toward the end and give us an idea of Allison and your three children, where you are with in that way with your family, and maybe your children's love of sports that's continuing to pass down through the Tamme family.
Yeah, so my wife Allison and I got married right before my senior season at Kentucky, which was my 5th year. So we got married in 2007. We've got 3 kids, Luke, Lila, and Ella. Luke is a freshman at Boyle County. Lila's in the 5th grade. Ella's in the 2nd grade. So Luke has played baseball and basketball and football his whole life up until now. He's in his football season now at Boyle County as a freshman, so we're enjoying as parents. I helped coach in all of youth, and then also through middle school, which was great fun. I really enjoyed it on the football program. I've also coached baseball now for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and plan to help with the high school program this coming spring. So I guess that love I had of those two sports in particular throughout my career, it's carrying itself over into a little bit of coaching. Football parents this fall were just in the stands, which has been great. I'm kind of the clock operator for the freshman team, so it's a good responsibility. But we've really enjoyed that. I tell you what we've also enjoyed is Lila, my middle child, and Ella, my youngest. They have gotten so big into volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
Luke's sports activities, and then Lila and Ella. And they do other things too, but volleyball's kind of their favorite right now. We're having a ton of fun as parents.
That's just super. And so appreciate catching up with you, Jacob. And as I say, I think sometimes it's hard to fully comprehend the life you've led and the impact you've had on so many, even beyond the sports realm, which I know also is a great source of pride for you. And we really, really do appreciate that so very much. Stay on the line just a little bit after we wrap up. Thank you so much. And I will say, this has been Randy Mills, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us today on Sports History Now, where Kentucky's greatest sports memories live on, such as our podcast today with one of Kentucky's all-time favorite sons, Jacob Tamme. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, guys.
Before we close today, I'd like to recognize Michael Dawaher, another of our Sports History Foundation supporters. Patrons like Michael help us to preserve these treasured sports memories, and you can also help our efforts by visiting our website, sportshistoryfoundation.org.